Welcome to Lawyers Who Care, the video show podcast that highlights attorneys who go above and beyond for their clients. And on each episode, we will meet a new lawyer and they will share stories of when they went beyond legal counsel for the benefit of their client. My name is Andrew Samalin, principal of Samalin Wealth, a nationally recognized wealth management firm for lawyers, their firms, and their clients. And let's applaud Lawyers Who Care and learn from them. Today, my special guest is Justin Contratto. He is a partner at Rutkin, Oldham, and Griffin, a Westport, Connecticut-based family law firm. And Justin represents high net worth individuals in all manner of matrimonial and family law proceedings. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you. Hi, Andrew.
So, Justin, tell us about what brought you to the profession.
Well, I always, both my parents were lawyers, so it seemed like the only thing in this world that I could do. I went to law school and I wanted to have a client. I didn't want to represent corporations. I didn't want to do tax law. I wanted to be sitting next to a client and advocating for them in court and helping them navigate their lowest lows or highest highs, whichever the court process was going to bring. So after I finished law school, I got a job with the Legal Aid Society in Brooklyn, representing kids in the juvenile rights practice, children who are victims of abuse and neglect, or children who are charged with acts of delinquency. And that's where I started. And I ended up staying with the Legal Aid Society for 8 years, first with the juvenile rights practice, and then ultimately with the criminal defense practice in Manhattan. And that was what shaped me as a lawyer. It was my background. It was my life. It was more than a job. It was all consuming. And that's what I did for 8 years until I went into family law and matrimonial law about a dozen years ago to go into private practice.
And tell us about the firm now and maybe.
Yeah. The firm now probably at first blush looks like the polar opposite of what I started out doing. Rutkin, Oldham, and Griffin represents ultra high net worth individuals. We handle some routine matters. We'll represent professionals, but for the most part, our bread and butter is handling really complex matters for people who have significant wealth, or for people who have just extraordinarily complex family law issues, whether they're complex custody battles or cases with intricate psychological components, and that's the thrust of our practice, which seems removed from being a legal aid attorney in Brooklyn or Manhattan, but it's really not. There are some run-throughs. It's still representing people who feel vulnerable. It's still representing people who mistrust the court system or who have not been well treated or well served by the court system. And it's still having someone sitting next to you that depends on you.
So these similarities, it almost seems worlds away when, someone is trying to put food on the table versus, someone with an 8-9 figure, net worth. Tell us what some of those similarities are and how you manage those, and how do they manifest themselves in the cases that you work on?
Sure. You're right. They do seem, and in many ways are, worlds away. I started representing kids who had been mistreated by their parents and were in foster care and were often abused and traumatized, had nowhere to turn, had no one to rely upon. They were in a scary world and they were embroiled in the court system. I don't know that that's necessarily so different for someone, even if they're in a enviable financial situation, who's been married perhaps to a narcissist, or someone who's extraordinarily controlling, who has isolated them and left that individual feeling like they have nowhere to turn to. The person upon whom they relied or whom they thought they were building their family with has turned on them and betrayed them in many cases. They don't know what the family assets are or how to access those assets. And they're concerned that they're going to be mistreated, not just by that individual who has, in some instances, mistreated them for years throughout the marriage, but that individual may use the court system to marshal the court system against that person so that they never ultimately feel protected. It's very, very similar. Those people are under the exact same stress as a child who's been mistreated by someone who they relied upon and depended upon. And you have to find that commonality. You have to understand that that's what people are going through and how traumatic that can be for some people. That's not to say that those people are without agency or not brilliant in their own right, but a divorce can be a real setback. It is a real setback. It's in many ways, it's an emotional death. It's extraordinarily difficult to deal with. And if there's uncertainty surrounding finances or the custody of your children, it can feel tremendously alienating and scary.
So on that last sentence, there were two topics: the concept of agency, and then the concept of extreme loss. Could there, in all the cases that you've had, certainly there have been the proverbial phoenix rising from the ashes, both from outcome and a family reconfiguration, sure, all the way, and how that might dovetail into this concept of agency. Can you speak about getting one's sea legs?
Yeah,
and how
that's a great question. And I haven't been doing this for 30 years, like some of my gray-haired partners, but I've been doing it long enough. And I haven't once had a client say to me after the divorce is concluded, and we'll stay in touch a little bit, check in and see how things are going. And I haven't once had a client say, geez, I really regret seeking a divorce. Life is just so much worse. There is something so toxic about a relationship that requires a divorce that has to be addressed. And that toxicity can be very insidious, and you may not recognize how it's impacting you. And as you represent a person, and as a person begins to trust you, and understand that you're their advocate, and understand that they have a voice, and understand that not only are you hearing that voice, but a court is hearing that voice. And the court is the final arbiter of these issues, not their spouse, not the individual who may have mistreated them, or the individual with whom they relied upon, who has left them in the lurch, but the court is making these decisions. And they have faith that you're advocating properly to the court and addressing their concerns with the court. You can see clients become more trustful, develop more autonomy, realize that they don't have to request things from their spouse anymore or clear things with their spouse, whether that's day-to-day custodial decisions or financial decisions, that they have autonomy. And when the divorce is finalized, they tend to have grown into the autonomy by the time of finalization and are ready to move forward. And it's a wonderful thing to see. You did not always get those kinds of outcomes, or I didn't always get those kinds of outcomes when you work in family court and work with children who have been through those situations, but you often did. I would say in most cases, our clients and my clients will grow into that agency if they didn't have it at the time that they sought us out.
Everyone, I'd like to thank my guest, Justin Contratto, a partner at Rutkin, Oldham, and Griffin in Westport, Connecticut. Justin, can you provide our audience with your contact information, whichever one you like?
Sure. You can just call us at 203-227-7301. It's Rutkin, Rutkin, Oldham, Oldham, and Griffin, Griffin. You can always just Google me. My name will pop up. It's Justin Contratto at Rutkin, Oldham, and Griffin. But a phone call is best.
Gotcha. This has been the Lawyers Who Care video show podcast that highlights attorneys who go above and beyond for their clients. And if you're an attorney or know one that does go above and beyond, feel free to reach us at 914-666-6600. Justin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks.